As we discussed in the previous video, we're not just interested in how much output or goods and services we can bring out, we are a little bit interested in how efficient these production processes may be. Because if we're able to bring out a lot of output for a relatively small amount of factors of production and resources, we are considered to be more efficient, and that's exactly what we would like to see in our country. So in order to sort of measure our productivity or how efficient we're going to be, we can use a few concepts known as productivity and labor productivity. So productivity just in general measures how effectively inputs are converted into outputs. So once again, if we're able to use very few inputs, but we get a lot of output in return, we are considered to be very efficient. We are considered to be very productive. The main measure that we focus in on is something known as labor productivity. It's the ratio of the output of goods and services to the labor hours used to produce that output. And this labor productivity, we want this number to be as high as possible because it just tells us that we are being the most efficient that we can possibly be. And it allows us to compare one production process versus another production process or compare countries against one another. And the reason why we do want to see very high labor productivity levels is because it is a key driver of wages and incomes. So in terms of countries, just worldwide, we do notice that in countries that have very high wages and very high incomes, we do tend to have a higher productivity level as well. So in the United States, a lot of countries in Europe, Canada, we have very high wages, very high incomes, and as a result, very high labor productivity as well. We're very efficient compared to developing countries such as in South America, Africa, and some countries in Asia as well. So here with labor productivity, there is a formula that also goes along with this. So let's focus in on labor productivity. Labor productivity. So labor productivity, once again, it's just the ratio of the amount of goods and services divided by the labor hour. So here a ratio just tells us that we need to take some type of fraction or do some type of division. Let's go ahead and give you an example. Suppose that you employ 10 workers. So here you are a business owner, and in your little own business, you employ 10 workers. And each of these 10 workers, each work 8 hours, each working 8 hours. So you employ 10 workers, each working 8 hours to produce. So think about your own little small business. Think about whatever you want to produce. Let's go ahead and say you want to go ahead and produce, say, tacos. So tacos are always good. So you employ 10 workers, each working 8 hours to produce tacos. And how many tacos do you produce? Let's go ahead and say that you produce 100 tacos. And the question that we want to go ahead and ask is, what is the productivity of your workers? So what is the labor productivity, or just productivity of your workers? And in order to answer this question, all we need to do is take the ratio of the amount of goods and services that your workers are able to produce and divide it by how many labor hours you actually used up. So here, your workers produce 100 tacos. So 100 tacos. We're going to go ahead and put that on top in the numerator. In the bottom right here in the denominator, we want to see how many labor hours. You have 10 workers. Each of them are working 8 hours. So we can say 10 workers multiplied by 8 hours. And then we want to go ahead and simplify this as much as we can. So here, 100 tacos, delicious tacos, divided by 80 hours. We can say 80 labor hours. So here, with 80 labor hours, you're able to produce 100 tacos. Simplify this once again as much as you can, and this is going to come out to be 1.25 tacos per labor hour. And this basically just gives you a figure of how productive your workers are. For every single labor hour that they work, they're able to produce you 1.25 tacos. So here, this is the number that we want to get as high as possible, and we can also use this to compare it to say, your competitor or to another country. So suppose that your competitor has a labor productivity of, say, 3 tacos per labor hour. Who is more productive? Who is more efficient? Is it your competitor or is it you? Well, because 3 is bigger than 1.25, your competitor is much more effective, much more productive than you are. So what we want to hone in on is this labor productivity measure. We want to get it as high as possible. So this is exactly how you do that, just by taking the ratio of the amount of goods and services and the labor hours. And the question that leads us or segues us into the next section is, how exactly do we get this number as big as possible? How can we convert this 1.25, this 1.25, to something maybe say like maybe 1,000 tacos per labor hour, or 2,000 tacos per labor hour? Well, we're going to see that increasing productivity can result from several factors, but we're going to be honing in on our factors of production once again. So land, labor force, human capital, physical capital, and technology. We need to break down each one of our factors of production in order to get this labor productivity as high as possible.